Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
Even though it took a toll, you see, I'm still not done. I wouldn't do it any differently because I have to live with myself. But yeah, it took a toll.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA volunteer, a court-appointed special advocate for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA. Hi, I'm here with Lori Nelson. Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Now, I know that you're feeling a little bit shy about doing this, so can you tell me about that just to make you even more shy?
Well, yeah, I have never really been good about talking about me because as far as I've always seen things, it's like I'm just me, okay? So I've never really felt that I was doing anything extraordinary or super significant because I think what I've always done is just who I am, my personality, which is I like to help. My mother used to tease me when I was a kid and say, Lori would always bring home the stray dogs and cats because she felt that they needed a home. Oh. And I don't know, I just always wanted to try to make a difference if I could, if I was able to. And so I think that's what people should do if they can, if they're in the position to do so. I feel uncomfortable talking about that because I'm like, is that special? Is that different? I think that that's just what I think a lot of people should do if they're in the position to do so.
Right. Well, the truth is most people don't, Lori.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from what I've heard, you are really an extraordinary individual. And so I want people to hear about that.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad to know that some people think that I am. Just as much as I have touched their lives, that they feel that I've been an important aspect in their lives, they've been important in mine too.
Right. So tell me about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? How are you?
I'm from Los Angeles originally. I was born in Los Angeles.
Get out. There's only 2 people that were born in LA. You're not one of them.
I know. I was born in LA at Queen of Angels Hospital. That hospital is named something else now, but I'm the daughter of parents that had 6 kids. I'm the youngest. And so I've always been different from my siblings. I was always trying to be as good as them or, equal to them. They were the smartest. They were the ones that succeeded in a lot of different things.
I totally get that because I'm the baby girl in my family. And
okay.
I have a baby brother, but he acts like he's older than me. So so I felt I had spent my whole childhood just trying to catch up with my older siblings. Yeah.
Always trying to measure up, catch up, be as good, with teachers and things, it's like they had them first. So the teachers even looked at me like, well, I know that you're so-and-so's sister, so, you need to be like so-and-so. And I'm like, but I'm not like so-and-so. I'm me, I was more geared towards the arts and poetry and English and things like that, where my siblings were geared towards education and science and stuff like that. And I really couldn't stand it. I didn't like science and stuff like that. I did it, but I didn't like it. So I got married and I had 3 wonderful children.
Right. So you first worked with victims of domestic violence, right?
Yes, I did. I worked with domestic violence victims. I am a survivor.
I see.
So I had a love for wanting to help because I, went to a domestic violence shelter with my kids when they were really little. I kind of felt the bug at that point, I wanted to help, and help women to realize that there's life after and they can do it, even though they might be scared, So that was my first job like that.
Right. And then you ended up working with kids in particular, right?
Yeah, kids in different foster family agencies, I stopped working for the domestic violence shelter because I guess philosophy with one of the managers, and they kind of felt like I was trying to tell the women how to be like me, and that I wanted them to be like me, and I disagreed, and I just said no. I don't. I want them to be like them, but I want them to know there's other options and there's things that they can do and choices. And, I just wanted to empower them to do whatever they felt they needed to do. So I ended up leaving the domestic violence shelter because of that. So I went to the foster care agencies from that point. So I worked at 3 different foster family agencies from that point.
Yeah. So what was your work like? What did you do with the kids?
I was a case manager, social worker for about 3 different foster family agencies. I worked for Walden Environment. I enjoyed working for Walden Environment a lot. I would probably have to say that that's one of the agencies that I didn't have any issues with. They were, it was a good agency, a good foster family agency. They had good social workers. They had good supervisors. I really feel like they believed in what they were doing. They had good therapists there. Yeah.
Wait, so how is that? So that's a private agency. So how is that different from DCFS?
Well, it was smaller. They had group homes. They had foster families as well as group homes that they. Let's see. I was a group home social worker.
I see. Right. So your first experience of working with kids was working with them in group homes?
Yes, in the group homes.
Wow, that must have been quite a...
That was interesting. It was very interesting. I had girls initially. They were the same age as my oldest daughter. Some of them even went to the same high school as my first 2 kids. And that was a challenge, not initially, but after they got to know who my kids were, and God only knows how they found out who my kids were, they would want to follow them home, and they would want to come and spend time at my house, which I didn't have a problem with. However, that's against agency rules. And so I had to let the kids know, I'm sorry, they'd want to, and some even ran away. They would run away to my house, and that's definitely a no-no, but that just lets me know how comfortable they felt confiding in me and coming to me about issues that were going on in the group homes, okay? But I would have to call my supervisor and let her know, and she would either come and get them and take them back, or one particular time she asked me if one girl could spend the night, and then she would come and get her in the morning. I said, okay, but that ended up being a mistake. But nothing happened, thank God. She was a little sexualized, and so she liked my son. And so how you have this feeling in the middle of the night, you have this feeling. And so she was supposed to be sleeping on the couch. And I woke up and I realized she was not on the couch and she was in my son's room, and just in the nick of time. And I said, what are you doing? And I told her, to go back to bed on the couch and not to do that. I said, no, this cannot happen. This cannot happen on my watch. So I slept on the other couch watching her.
Making sure she didn't leave the couch, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. But so, I went through a lot of different things. I got very close to the youth, very close to some of them. Some of them were tough nuts to crack, because they were guarded. They didn't want to let you in at first. They didn't want to talk to you. It's like, well, why are you different? They would just say it. They just said how they felt. Why are you different? I don't want to have to tell the same thing to another social worker.
Right, telling their same story over and over again, right?
Right, over and over, and I said, I understand. I get it. This must be very difficult for you depending on how many places you've been. And I just told them, just give me a chance. Just give me a chance and let me tell you a little bit about me, and why I want to do this, and I want to get to know you. So they would let their guard down, some of them too much, like I say, to the point to where they would follow my kids home or want to run away from home and things like that. But
how did you meet Venus Manuel? And of course, she says about you that you're one of the good ones. You're one of the good social workers. So
Well, I met her at DCFS. She was one of the kids on my caseload. And she actually, I wanted her and her sister, but I only was given her on my caseload. Yeah, she was a little guarded at first, not mean or anything, but she was a little guarded. She kind of felt also like, why do I, have to tell my story again, to you, and why are you different? And I don't think it's going to work. You can try. She would say things like, you can try, but I don't think it's going to work. That was initially. After working with her for a while, she was a go-getter. I was like, oh my God, this girl, she has so much heart and so much love. She had a hard time at home, really hard time at home. It was very tumultuous between she and her mother. I talked to her mother a lot, and I was like, oh my God, I felt like I really had my work cut out for me if she was going to stay in that house, because I felt like everything I was trying to do and everything that Venus was trying to do was being sabotaged, unfortunately, from her mother. And that's not a put down to her mother, but it's just that I don't feel that she realized how much she was really sabotaging her own daughter. And so eventually, she had to be removed from that house because it just was not healthy for her. It was not healthy. So she needed to be placed elsewhere. So I was her social worker.
Right. So when you handled her case, and she says, by the way, that you're the first one who actually saw her as a person and not just a case file.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate that she says that. She was the case file. None of the kids, and I keep saying caseload because that's what they called it. You know what I'm saying?
And how many kids did you have at one time?
We had 30 kids. And so we had to see each of them every month. That was a challenge, but yeah, that's what we had to do. So I had 30.
Right. And also, I just know this from some of the caseworkers I've worked with, that even hopefully you have 30 cases. I know often many of them have many, many more.
It's more. Absolutely. So that's the minimum.
Right. And even that is a pretty overwhelming number, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You figure you have 28 to 30 days, maybe 31, in the month, but they're not all work days. You have weekends. And so you really need to get to see all of them and touch bases, and not just a 5-minute thing, to make sure that they're okay.
Right. And you're not just seeing them, right? You're writing reports. You're talking to the people in their lives. You're arranging for services.
Exactly. Resources, services, dental appointments, doctor appointments, school officials, teachers, the whole gamut. You're trying to see everybody who's involved with this child's life, to make sure that everybody, not just me, but everybody is doing everything possible to make sure that this kid succeeds, and that's not easy to do, that's not easy.
Oh, and I can imagine the work must be pretty heartbreaking sometimes.
It is. Oh my God, it is. When they cry, when they would cry, I would cry. I know a lot of social workers are, I'm not really that different. There's a lot of social workers that are like me. They cry too, but I do feel like it's hard to compartmentalize your feelings when you see that they're unhappy or that they're being hurt in some way or neglected. And so it was very difficult for me to compartmentalize those things. One time my kids, they called a powwow for me, and said, Mom, you're spending way too much time with these kids. You're spending more time with these kids than you're spending with us. And I had to really take that into consideration, because, I felt like my kids were okay. So, I felt like if emergencies popped up or things like that with my kids on the caseload, then I would just take the time to do it. But I had to try to balance it, and that's a hard thing to do too if you have kids. I can only imagine what it would have been like if I had a husband, because that probably would not have been. He probably would not have liked that either. But yeah, it was a challenge.
Right. So Venus is one of the successes, and so can you tell me about some of the other kids who you worked with?
Well, there was a young man that I'm still in contact with today. He was one of the guarded ones as well. He didn't want to tell his story over and over again. He had a brother. He and his brother were, they were both good kids, but, Brian went one way, his brother went another way. Brian chose to not be a statistic, shall I say, and he went into the military. But it was a challenge for him because his mother, she was an addict, and she would try to play him, he and his brother, but mostly him, try to get money from him because he worked. He worked while he was in foster care, and he was just another go-getter. He was pretty good in school. He worked. I think the group home foster father was, really fond of him as well. And he really tried his hardest to make sure that all the kids succeeded at his group home. But Brian, he struggled with that. His mother would try to get money from him, and he would feel compelled to give her money, because she would give him sad stories, and we would have to talk to him and try to let him know that I know you want to help her, but she's not going to use that money for a good use, So that took a little time for him to break that habit of trying to help. His brother also tried to play him that way. His brother was older, and he would try to get money from him a lot of times to do things that weren't right. But Brian succeeded. He graduated. He went into the military. That's what he really wanted to do. And he's still in the military. He's making a career out of it. And he would call me from time to time. Sometimes he would come and visit. I'd be so happy. I'd be shocked out of my mind that he would want to come and visit, But every now and then he'll still give me a call, and he's still in touch with my daughter. They went to the same high school, so he's still in touch with her as well. Yeah, he's one of the ones that I wished I could bring home.
Yeah.
That he's a good guy. He's a good guy, and he's made a successful career out of the military.
And what about some of the kids that you weren't able to help?
Hi, those are the heartbreaks. Some of them still bother me to this day. One of them, her name was Ada, and she had a beautiful 2-year-old little girl. Oh my God, she was just gorgeous. And Ada was very sexualized, the confidence, or shall I say, false confidence that some of these young ladies have about themselves, and their bodies and things like that. It was a challenge, because she just kind of felt like she could get everything she wanted from giving her body, and having sex. And she had this beautiful 2-year-old little girl as a result of that. And she was a hard one to try to guide, because these kids, they had a lot of freedom. They had freedom that they had never had before. They were given their own apartments. And
right, so these are kids in TAY,
Transitional housing, transitional age youth.
Yeah, can you explain that to me? So for our listeners that don't know what TAY is?
Yeah, transitional age youth, it's where the kids are almost ready to age out of foster care and out of the system, okay? And most of those kids, if they did not go into transitional age youth programs, they wouldn't have anywhere to go. They'd be on the streets. They'd be homeless, and God only knows. So these kids had an opportunity to stay in the system for 4 more years, from 18 to 22. And they were given their own apartments that were totally furnished. They were given everything, They were given food stipends. They were given clothing stipends. They were given everything.
Right. And what are the requirements for them to stay in it? Because there are some, right?
Yeah, they need to, if they have not graduated from high school, they need to stay in high school until they graduate. If they had already graduated, they need to at least be going to college part-time, and they need to be working at least part-time. Some of them just wanted to work full-time, and that was okay as long as they had graduated from high school. They had curfews, and they also needed to save half of their earnings from working. Okay, so we saved half of their earnings, and we didn't keep it. This was for them for when they actually reached the end of the program. So if they had given us half of their earnings at the end of the 22, and they were stable, then all that money was given back to them.
Right. Is it hard for the kids to stay in the program?
It's hard for a lot of the kids to stay in the program because this is freedom that they had never experienced before, okay? It seems like, I kept thinking, oh my God, if I had been given an apartment and I didn't have to pay rent, I mean, you do not even have to pay rent. You don't pay your utilities. You don't even buy your own food. You get a stipend for that. You get a stipend for your clothing still. Oh my God. And then you're given, 2 to 4 years where you can save your own money and stuff. So really, basically, you are not, as a youth in these programs, you're not really paying for anything unless you want to pay for your own stuff. We didn't pay for their phones, so they had to pay for things like that. They had to save up to get transportation. Otherwise, they would use tokens and things like that. But this was freedom for a lot of them that they had not had before. So they kind of went crazy.
Right, so it's freedom with also temptation.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so they had a curfew where they would have to be in by 10. If they wanted to go somewhere on the weekends, they needed to ask. They needed to get permission beforehand, and then they needed to be back on Sunday by a certain period of time. A lot of them, they got a taste of that freedom and they just, didn't want to follow the rules. They didn't want to follow the rules. Some of them, they would be in at 10 o'clock, but they would be sneaking company in. The girls were trying to hide boys in the closet and things like that. And I would do drop-in visits for that very reason. And that's why my kids were saying, Mom, you're spending more time with those kids than you are with us, But I would have to go by there, after 10 to see, hey, what's going on here? You got to go.
Who's in the closet? Right. Yeah.
Exactly, right? They weren't allowed to smoke in the house, and, you could see clearly they were having parties and there were cigarette butts and, there was alcohol bottles and things like that left, So I would have to be tough, and tell them, you guys, hey, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. You're going to jeopardize, your being able to stay in the program. Some of them listened, some didn't. But one situation with the very highly sexualized young lady who had the 2-year-old, and she had another roommate. What had happened was, this is very painful for me to talk about. This is some of the flaws in the system. One of my supervisors wanted, it's kind of hard to explain, but he had a significant other that was working, but he wasn't a social worker. I guess he was sort of like a trainee. And so he wanted his significant other to learn the system and different things and learn how things work. So this young man went out to visit these 2 young ladies on my caseload. Well, according to them, and allegedly, and I say allegedly because this is what they told me, but my job as a social worker is to believe my clients, believe my kids, okay? I didn't feel they had any reason to lie. In fact, I know in my heart they weren't lying. They weren't. But they said that he was making passes at them and saying things that were very inappropriate about their sex life and things like that. And if they were on birth control and things like that. And I'm like, that is not appropriate. That's not appropriate. They felt very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. So what I did was I told my immediate supervisor, and he said, oh, no. He said, that is not good. Well, the supervisor that had the significant other was my supervisor's supervisor. Okay.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So he said, so I told him, I said, what should I do? And he said, we have to report it. We have to report. He said, you have to make a report. And I said, okay. He said, if we don't make a report about this, then we'll be in trouble. It could blow up and it will be in trouble. And so I said, okay, well, I'm trusting my supervisor. He's trusting the system. And that's exactly what I did. I did a report about it. And his supervisor went ballistic. Now, keep in mind, that was his significant other that came out. And so he went ballistic and he didn't believe me. He said I was lying. And, my supervisor was just shocked. He said, whoa, he said, I know this woman. She, she's a good worker. She would not lie about something like this. Why would anybody lie about something like that? That's crazy. But anyway, long story short, it didn't turn out well. I ended up getting terminated because he said I lied. He said I was lying. And what happened was the young ladies would have been my witnesses. However, he intimidated the one with the little girl and threatened to take her daughter from her. That's the ugly side of the system. It's like, dear God, really? Yeah, he threatened that he would take her little girl from her. So she ran away. I would have run away too. You threatened to take my kid from me. She ran away. And the other young lady, they threatened her with something, but They both ran away. And the other one who ran away, she told me, she said, oh my God, she said, Miss Nelson, she said, oh no, we had to go. We had to go because they threatened us, you know. So that grieves me. That grieves me a lot.
Right. So you didn't have any support then? You had no corroborating witnesses?
No, no, the witnesses, they fled. And my supervisor, although he fought for me, you know, it was like his supervisor alleged that I lied. And but I tried to fight it. The only good thing that came out of that was that he was demoted. He ended up getting demoted because I went to the board and I took it as far as I could go. Even though I lost my job before, I took it to the board and everything, I did find out from my immediate supervisor that he got demoted. And he said, if it makes you feel any better, he said, I know you feel horrible about this. He said, I feel horrible about this. He said, because I told you to write the report. He said, and that's what we were supposed to do. He said, and it ended up backfiring and it hurt you. He said, but if it makes you feel any better, he went kicking and screaming all the way when he got demoted. And I said, yay, yay, because that was not right. How I got back in touch with Venus was with this program. We met up at a program called Success is Our Future. She was one of the workers there, and I didn't even think that she was there. I was working there, at the program, and next thing I know, I see this person coming towards me that was just so excited. and then she said, oh my God, you don't even recognize me. You don't even remember me. And I said, oh my God, it's you. It's you. And we just hugged and cried because I was like, oh my God, how long has it been? And I didn't realize that I was that close to her, but not realizing I was that close to her. And ever since then, it was like, you're never, never, never getting out of my grasp. You're never going to be away from me again, So, yeah. So I worked with the youth in that program and did interviews and, watched them graduate. And she was a part of that too. She was a part of that, as probation officer and,
right.
firsthand experience as being one of the kids in, K.
It's quite unusual, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So she is a major success. I'm very proud of her. I'm proud of her. That kid had more gumption than anybody I've ever seen, than most adults even.
Right. So your kids are grown now, right?
Absolutely.
So now doing the work that you do, right? Because you are actually working with adult clients now, right?
Yes, I'm working with adults. Mm-hmm. It's and I don't get one-on-one contact with them either. I would really love to do that.
Would that be true if it weren't for COVID, or it doesn't allow for it?
Actually, no. COVID has nothing to do with that. My main function is I work with the different agencies and programs and trying to ensure that they're doing everything that they are supposed to do as far as providing services, for our adult clients. I work with a lot of different county agencies. I work with like DMH and ODR. ODR is Office of Diversion and Reentry. So they work with clients that are out of, they're justice, they call it justice involved.
Justice involved. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Clients. And so,
right.
Let's see, who else? We work with a lot of county agencies that try to provide services.
Right, and from what I've heard and from what I've seen, and from the research that I've done, there's a lot of systems that work and a lot of systems that fail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, there. I think that each agency has its pros and cons, its successes and failures. I think a lot of it deals with management. I think that sometimes they're far removed from the groundwork, or the actual people that are doing, as far as I'm concerned, is the hard work. I feel like a lot of those workers don't get the support that they need. If you're overwhelmed with the caseload, oh my God, for God's sake, hire more people. Because you cannot do the best job that you can do if your caseload is too high or if you're overworked. Then you take the risk of not doing the job at all and just, quote unquote, lying and, writing reports that never happened and things like that. And then you take the even greater risk of kids falling through the cracks and being harmed, if not even killed. So that's a big thing to me. I don't just fault management, but I also know that not only are some of the social workers and people that, on the groundwork are overworked, there are those that really just don't care. They're in it, for the money. It's a job to them and that's it. And they'll write the report, even though it didn't happen. They'll say they did the drive-by, although it didn't happen. And I've seen that. And it's really angered me because you're affecting people's lives. You're affecting families. How dare you? How dare you write a report that's false and it affects this family? I never really wanted to take kids from families unless it was absolutely necessary. I remember on Christmas Eve one time, one of my coworkers, this was at DCFS, one of my coworkers asked me would I go out and remove children. It was Christmas Eve, for God's sake. And I was like, I don't want to do this, and he was like, please come with me, because the woman was African-American and she had beautiful children. She was beautiful. She was gorgeous. And her kids were beautiful. She had a 13-year-old daughter, and then she had little stair steps. So I think she had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and an infant, a brand new infant. And she had problems with substance abuse. She was doing really well. She had her kids. And so she tested positive on a random drug test. And we had to go out. Well, I didn't want to, but I went with my friend because he just did not want to go by himself. And so when we got to her house, the oldest one, the 13-year-old, she screamed when she saw us at the door. And she said, not again. And she ran to her room because they had been taken from her before. So I was like, oh God, oh God. Her house was immaculate. Her kids were well taken care of. She was a good mother. Her mistake was she went to a party and she was offered the, substance she used. And it just so happened that her random drug test day was that day and she tested positive. So I can remember my coworker begging with our ADA, can we just wait until after Christmas so these kids can open their presents and he was like, no, he was just livid. And we were saying, we looked around and everything. The kids didn't look like they were in harm's way. He was like, no, he was adamant. We had to take her kids at night. I still can visualize trying to peel those little toddlers off of her leg. They were crying. She was crying and begging us. And right now, I still want to cry about that because it was just like, oh my God, oh my God. That's what made me really want to question, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to do this job?
I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, how can...
But she did get her kids back.
She did. Oh, good.
I saw her months later, and I saw her in a Walmart, and she had her kids, and I was like, oh God, thank you. Thank you. She got her kids back, But that was one of the most heart-wrenching things for me.
Right. So how do you do the work that you do, Lori?
Well, now it's a little bit easier because now I'm in adult probation. It's a little bit easier. But I miss working with youth. I miss working with women, but it's hard. One of my family members, one time we were at a family reunion and she was, she's never worked with the helping profession. She worked in insurance, so she was a big supervisor in the insurance agency. And she, everybody was at this family reunion was bragging about what they do, I do this, I do that, And I didn't say anything. I wouldn't say anything. And so my niece's husband looked at me. He was just watching me and he said, so Lori, what do you do? Tell me about what you do. And I was like, oh. So I was telling them, what I do, and domestic violence and social work and kids. And my niece said, oh my God, how do you work with those people? I was so offended. I said, what do you mean, those people? I said, these people have been hurt. These people have dealt with a lot of different challenges and things that you have never had to experience and you could never possibly understand. I said, I am really proud of the fact that I get to work with those people. I was so mad. I was just angry. And her husband just smiled at me, and he just nodded his head because
Because he understood?
everybody, yes, he understood.
Yeah, he understood. Yeah.
He got it.
Right. And Venus says that you saved her life.
I think she's far too, she's really sweet and too kind about that, but I love her for saying that, I would do it over again if I could with not only her, but every kid. I really grieve the ones that ran away, that I lost touch with, because I really want to know that they're okay. But I am so happy for Venus. She was kind of headstrong. She was a challenge a little bit, but she was a sweetheart. She wanted, I feel that she really always wanted to do the right thing. And I feel like she wanted to please. I feel like she wanted to please people. I feel like with me, and I could be wrong, but even though she has kind of attested to that, she tried to please her mother in so many ways, trying to be good. She tried to be the good daughter. She tried to be the good sibling. She tried to be the good student. She tried in every way to please her mother. And it was to no avail because nothing was ever good enough. And I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine. Wow, she did everything she could. But I think that she tried to do or be the good kid on the caseload. And she didn't have to do that because she was already good. Mm-hmm. She didn't have to try to be that. But I think that we clicked. We could talk. And I did listen to her, when she wasn't right, I would tell her, okay, right. I think you could have handled that differently, and next time, what do you think about trying this? And she would first say, because, my mother doesn't deserve that. No, I don't want to be nice to her because she doesn't deserve that kind of thing. I would say, would you just try it for me? And she would try,
So have you ever worked with any CASAs? Do you know anything about the program? Have you?
I know of people who have worked in CASA. It's not just here in California. You guys are all over, right?
All over the country. Yeah. Well, the unusual part about being a CASA volunteer is normally you only have one kid. Which makes a big difference. And
okay.
Also, the CASA is a volunteer position, so
I can imagine it being every bit as challenging with one kid as you would with more.
It's super, super demanding. Yeah. But it's not the same as having, 30 kids that you got to keep track of.
But it's hard. I know it's a challenge, because you want so much for that one. You want so much. It's almost like they're yours, and you want that. So I can see that being just as challenging.
Right. Well, they're yours, but you don't have to take them home. In fact, the saying with you, you're not allowed to take them home.
Right. Although you'd love to, but you can't.
Right. Yeah, I have certainly felt that. So what is the one thing that people wouldn't know about you unless you told them?
Well, this is a biggie. To me, it's a biggie. It's like the confidence and the everything that other people see in me, I definitely do not see in myself. I lack a lot of self-confidence. I just kind of run to the roar and do what I have to do anyway. But a lot of times I don't feel that, oh my God, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. When other people tell me, oh, you were fantastic. I don't like speaking in front of people. And with Tay, I had to all the time. I had to get up and give. I had to speak in front of the entire probation department, for Success is Our Future, and in front of bureau chiefs and people like that. I feel very intimidated by those people in their positions by virtue of just them being in those positions,
I wonder if the fact that you feel that you don't feel confident is what makes you able to listen so well to people.
That could be, because I definitely didn't feel heard as a kid. I'm the youngest of six. And so everybody was smarter. Everybody had done everything first. A lot of times one sibling was always trying to one-up me and make me look bad. She tried to get me in trouble all the
Kids
time.
do that, yeah.
And I found out later that she resented that I was born, because she said she was the baby until I came along.
Yes.
And I didn't even know that until we were adults, but I just knew that she was mean to me growing up. And she went out of her way to try to make me look bad, in front of friends and family. That's probably it. My mother said something that was and to this day, I wrote it down, I typed it, and I have it up on my bedroom wall. She said something about me when my oldest was, I think she was like in the 6th grade. And my daughter had a Holocaust survivor for a teacher. She was a wonderful woman. And her assignment was to go home and ask your grandparents what kind of child was your mother. And I was cooking in the kitchen, and my mom was in the living room with my oldest, in elementary school. And I heard her ask my mother this. And I froze because I was like, oh my God, what is my mother going to say about me to my daughter? What kind of kid I was? And my mother, she took a deep breath, like she would often do when she was thinking. And then she said, well, she was a hard kid to direct, but she knew where she was going. And she didn't know how to talk to us, but we didn't know how to listen. And I was like, oh my God, at that very moment, I realized she did understand me. She knew me. And I had this newfound appreciation for her because I didn't think my mother understood me growing up. We didn't always see eye to eye. I never felt like I measured up. And when I went into the helping profession, I guess I just kind of felt like not only did I like it, but that's what I was good at. But I felt like people listened, and I felt like I had something to say that was of interest to them. And they felt like it was important, and they felt better about themselves after I kind of talked about me. As I said, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I don't know. I guess people just really wouldn't know that I kind of lack the confidence to do some of the things that I'm asked to do every day because I do it. Well, that's good to know.
I would never have guessed that. Yeah, not in our few conversations so far. I would never have guessed that. You seem like a very bright woman, very caring woman with a lot of commitment and a lot of capacity and a lot of confidence.
Thank you, Jayne. I appreciate that. I feel I have a lot to give still. When I retire from probation, I know that I'm going to probably go back into some form of the helping profession. Domestic violence is a big one for me. Tay is a big one for me. But I'm not sure. But I just know that I'll probably end up doing that.
So you haven't finished helping out?
No, that's my first love. And I really feel that that's where I can do my best.
I think that the people that do the kind of work that you do often, and the people that do the work that I do and others, it takes a huge toll often.
It does. And, I just recently, I guess, realized that I've made a lot of sacrifices. I've had some losses, personal losses, due to the work, but it was important to do the work and keep my own integrity. And I don't know, I had to do what was right, even when it was uncomfortable to do so. And I've lost a lot of things because of that. But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't do it any differently because I have to live with myself. But yeah, it took a toll. It definitely took a toll on me.
I want to thank you very much for talking to me today, Lori.
My pleasure. I appreciate it.
If you see something, say something. If you suspect that a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. And right now in COVID, reports of abuse and neglect are down by 50%. And that's not because it's not happening. It's because kids are not in school, and their teachers and other adults, mandated reporters, aren't seeing them. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you're a kid in care and you want to know more about your sexual and reproductive health, you can go to fosterrepprohealth.org. That's fosterrepprohealth.org. And if you're an older kid in trouble, check out pennylane.org. They offer a safe place for homeless and LGBTQ youth who need some help. And if you're a kid in care who wants a casa, you can ask for one. In Los Angeles, go to casala.org, and anywhere else in the nation, go to nationalcasagal.org, and you can get one. I want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful music, Eferisto. To hear more of her music, go to Spotify and Instagram at Christina Aposto. That's ChristianaAposto. I know you want to. Her stuff is really great. And thanks to my audio producer extraordinaire, Marcos Campito. I'm glad I found you. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear, please rate us and hit subscribe.